to the Zone of Genius, the podcast where money talk meets real talk. I'm Dana Wilson, founder and CEO of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper, the financial services marketplace connecting you to trusted financial professionals who get it. You'll hear from experts from our platform who break things down in a way that's honest, actionable, and easy to understand. Whether you're building wealth, healing financial trauma, or just figuring out your next move, this is your go-to spot for real conversations that move you forward. This is your zone to learn, grow, and take charge of your financial story, one empowering conversation at a time. If this episode hits home, subscribe, share it with your people, and of course, leave us a review. And when you're ready to build your financial team, head to chipprofessionals.com to find the right pro for you. We'll see you there. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zone of Genius podcast. As you heard, my name is Dana Wilson, CEO and founder of CHIP, which stands for Changing How Individuals Prosper. And we're a financial services marketplace, making it easier for you to find financial professionals who might be able to better suit your financial needs, help you build the wealth that you want. And I'm really excited to bring one of our professionals on the platform who has been engaged with us for some time. She's an incredible, just awesome human being outside of what she does on a day-to-day basis as a financial professional. So Gloria, welcome to the Zone of Genius podcast. I'm excited for everyone to not only learn about you, but also hear more of your expertise.
Hi, Dana. I am really excited to be here. Thank you. You are someone I deeply admire and love the work you're doing as well. So I can't wait to get into it.
Awesome. Well, please tell everyone a little bit more about you and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Gloria. I am Latina. I was born in Mexico and raised in Southern California and San Diego. I'm currently based out of Los Angeles, and I am a certified financial planner. I work at an RIA, but that is my 9 to 5. I would say my 5 to 9, outside of helping people with their money, financial planning, and managing investments, is really pouring back into my people, whether that's women of color, Latinos, Spanish-speaking population, and really making sure we uplift and change the narratives we once thought were true about money and start empowering our people and normalize wealth for everyone.
Absolutely. And I feel like we need that now more than ever. We need to normalize these conversations, normalize getting access to great professionals like yourself. So let's definitely just jump into it.
Sure.
So what do you think the unique financial challenges are that are facing first generation wealth builders, and how can they differentiate themselves from their peers?
I think if money is taboo in general, that is exacerbated for first gen folks, right? It is deeply unspoken. It's not just taboo. So it's common to hear things growing up like, credit score is built this way, or money is bad in this way. All of these negative things around money. If anything, if you hear it or you see tension around money because money's tight for first gen folks, correct? So I just remember my personal story of I got my first job and I didn't negotiate. I didn't understand my benefits. I didn't understand what a 401k was. The credit cards I did have were not great ones because I was told that there was myths around how to build credit in our community. So you just really start probably behind the start line of many. And so it just shapes the way you're seeing money. And I think but one of the benefits of that is how to be resourceful and what to do with less. And I tell people, I know what my enough is. It's quite lower because I've had to be resourceful and I've had to figure it out before. So when people are like living paycheck to paycheck, I'm like, are you really? Living paycheck to paycheck means there's literally nothing left after rent and food is paid. And we often say the term so often, but I'm like, I really know how to be scrappy. And so in times of, economic uncertainty, I think that helps. And then you really know what your surplus is. So I would say that's like a little bit of both sides of what I feel like being a first generation wealth builder is like.
Absolutely. I think you said something really key about the term and how we embed that into our brains from paycheck to paycheck, and really just starting to get rid of certain language because it's, it was just told to us, right? Paycheck to paycheck means this, but does it actually mean that? And are you actually living paycheck to paycheck? So I love how you just phrased that. So I hope we all start to kind of shift our mindset even in that particular moment. How does family financial responsibility impact the ability of first gen individuals to build wealth?
I think I caught an echo. We're usually not building for one. I think that's simply put, we're building for many. We're often told, there's a saying in Spanish, like, you are my retirement plan, because often the parents that came before made a lot of sacrifices for you to now be able to build wealth for the first time. And so you're retiring your parents, you're trying to retire yourself, and you're trying to build and set up the next generation up better than you were set up. And so I think there is a common sense of feeling immense responsibility and caring a lot. And one of my favorite quotes that I remind folks that are first gen is, just because you carry it well doesn't mean it isn't heavy. So that often means, I think, we are internalizing a lot of the stress and anxiety around money. And, you're remembering you don't have a trust fund. You don't have a rich uncle to hit up to save you guys. So I don't think people truly understand that when you can't rely on others and you have fear around the financial systems that are in place, the amount of pressure we put on ourselves is a lot. And so the financial load on top of the emotional load can feel hefty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said about, we're not planning for one, we're planning for many. And also in a positive way too, right? It definitely comes with a lot of pressure. But then once you get to the point where you can start to relieve that pressure, there is this sense of just care that you feel to be able to do certain things for your family as well, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I think on that too, you don't realize how much, I think in the long term, it's great. You feel like you helped so many people along the way, but there's burnout, there's scarcity mindset, there's hyper frugality, the fear of investing, all that comes with feeling like there's too much at stake, and the risk to, you have everyone's livelihood that you're trying to take care of. So even when you're technically okay later on, I think you don't realize the ripple effects that had in you. So
yeah, absolutely. And to a follow-up question on that too, how do you suggest when you're working with clients that they start to relieve some of that pressure and that burden?
Give yourself grace. You start there. If you don't, it's self-deprecation. You don't have the self-soothing skills, and so it can be very counterproductive to focus on all the things you're doing wrong and all the things you still need to do. And so start with giving yourself grace. Remind yourself you're the first. This is normal. If you had it figured out, you wouldn't be the first. It would have been like passed down onto you, the information. And so just breaking it down, focusing on things one at a time. And I think selfishly, sometimes you do have to think about, if I can't fill my own cup first, I have nothing to give. Like, you really have to remember you can't pour from an empty cup. And that is extremely hard in first gen, specifically immigrant families, because you are told family and others over everything. Humility is glorified. You have all these things. And so I would say just start by giving yourself grace and bringing it back to you first.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like grace is always my favorite word. So what are some common misconceptions next gen inheritors might have about managing wealth or legacy planning?
I think if you don't know, how your parents grew up with money, if you are inheriting wealth, you don't know how they built it, there can be an assumption that money is easy, and you assume windfalls are coming and you'll be set. So that's a really huge misconception when it comes to passing on wealth. And I would say legacy is the key term here, because legacy almost involves now more values and how that was built up. So I like that legacy planning is a term more than just wealth planning. And a lot of our clients specifically think like, okay, well, I made this money. How do I make sure to pass it on in a way that my kids are going to be responsible and understand what things are like nowadays? Also, in today's day and age, it's important to make sure that just because somebody is inheriting wealth, they also know not just what came with it in values, but the current economic situation that we're in today. I think wealth today is not what it was 30 years ago, and understanding, more of the technical side of things and how this can impact you taxes wise, liquidity wise, the world we live in with inflation, and how student debt is more common than it was before, and just a lot of things. So I think misconceptions just being that if you get money, you'll be set, because that's not how it works. There needs to be an understanding of how that was probably nice. It would be nice to know how that was inherited and how that was built, but also you have to learn how to manage it. You have to have financial fluency.
Oh yeah, because if that fluency isn't there, it's just like then someone else is restarting again as that first generational person.
Right. And I don't know stats, but it's like by the third generation, I think almost all the money is used up, like because there was no passing down of one, the values, two, the education, and maybe three, that work ethic that it took to build the first person to build up the wealth.
Oh yeah, and also the appreciation for what it took to do all of those things, as opposed to just saying, whatever, this is money that I just received and, that's it. But it's like there was, that passing down is a very important thing. So to your point, how can financial professionals build trust with clients who are navigating money without generational guidance or mentorship?
I think we try and give this fancy rule book of here's the steps you can do to create space and like be a genuine human being, but that's what it is. I think these people, you don't know how much it probably took, how much courage it took for them to come talk to you, the anxiety and fear they're feeling. So just meet them where they are. This industry has so many people who just talk at you and try and be the smartest in the room. And it is so frustrating because that is the last way we build trust. It's actually very ego driven, which, has its pros in some ways if you want to be the leader in the room or feel a certain way, but not when it comes to this first generation client. And you meet them where they are, you listen to understand, you don't just talk. And avoid assumptions. I'm always like, I want to set the stage. I don't assume you know anything. So feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, remind them that this is really for them and to build confidence. So it's as simple as holding space without judgment. And it's so much easier said than done, I know. But stop talking, pause, listen, like being that genuine human being, because they are coming to you with a lot. They want to probably unload a lot. They're scared to do so. And so you might need to give them time and space. And it's beautiful what happens when you just stop talking. Sometimes it's all they need to keep going and to keep telling you that one gem that would have helped you manage your money differently or plan something differently for their kids or whatever that is.
I love that, especially the stop talking part. Because after being in this industry for a very long time, sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, please stop. And there is a shared part of just making sure that people feel comfortable to talk and to share so that you can learn more. And that definitely comes with not talking and doing more, not just listening, but I like that you said understanding, right? People can talk, people can try to listen, but if you're not listening to understand, then what are you doing, right? How are you really helping someone? So kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit, what role does cultural identity play in shaping financial values and decision-making for first gen and next gen individuals?
That is a loaded question because our culture deeply shapes our beliefs around money, whether we talk about it or not. It's very unspoken, but that's how we learn what's right, what's wrong, what I should be, what's shameful, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what's possible for me. Even that, I think many people come in thinking they're not capable of building wealth because they haven't seen someone like them do it or don't have anyone around them. So there's these deep ingrained thoughts of how we feel and think about money that show up. And I'm a big believer in we have a relationship with money, whether we like it or not. So we might as well make it a good one. Specifically in the Latino community or immigrant families, we know that our parents or grandparents, or even ourselves, if we're immigrants, are often coming from countries where systems aren't trusted. So that those unstable economies, they're coming into this country and they're probably very scarcity mindset driven, very cash oriented. And so if you're approaching these families or the kids of these families that are now building wealth for the first time, you have to come in knowing that's the lens where there's already distrust and valid distrust. It's not like, oh, that's irrational. Like that doesn't make sense. The US doesn't work like that. It's like, no, I get you. I hear you. I understand why that would be the case. There is belief that money corrupts people, right? Money is evil. It changes people. We hear that all the time in the Latino community. And it's so sad. And because I don't think that's the case. I think money can it just amplifies who you are, right? If you are a good person, then you can do more and be more and give more when you have more in your pocket to then share. And then I think another thing that's ingrained is often men are still often expected to manage the finances. So I see a lot of women who feel like lack of confidence, lack of knowing, they think they're not capable. That's not for me. I'm not the one who ran the household before, or even thinking like I'm not the breadwinner, so I don't get to talk or make decisions around money. And so all these little things, and specifically that's Latinos, but I know immigrant families relate to this and first gen people relate to this because that's passed down from generation to generation. And if that's how you're raised, there's like psychological stats of, you shape who you are as a human being in like the first couple years of childhood, right? And so imagine how that affects us probably for the rest of our lives if we don't create that awareness to be like, oh, maybe I still have those initial innate beliefs, but now you create space between thought and action, and that awareness is where we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good point for people to really understand like where someone is coming from, physically and mentally, and that understanding, because I do feel like that part of it gets lost, where it's just like, oh, why do you believe this way? Where if you take a second to, again, like listen to understand, you can kind of start to put yourself in more of an understanding role of empathy, understanding like where that person came from, what they had to deal with, and why it might be taking them a little long to build this relationship with you or walk on this journey. So I really like that you pulled that out, because I feel like people just forget about that. It's like, okay, well, now you're here and now you need to do all of these things that we do here, right? And that's not realistic for a lot of people, even just the human process of adapting to different cultures and norms. And I love the fact that you talked about women's roles in that, right? How do you empower, the clients that you work with, the women that you work with, to start to build that confidence?
It sounds simple, but you give them permission. Sometimes we just need someone to tell us, like, you are allowed to have thoughts and feelings about money. You are allowed to want things about money, and remind them all these taboos they heard of, maybe say them back to them and be like, that is not, just because you heard maybe this or this or this, that does not mean it applies to you. You let them open up about maybe what's holding them back. I really lean into some of the deeper planning questions and life planning and psychology of money questions, because you don't really, it's like you have to face the monster under your bed. You can't do anything about it until you face it. So trying to open up that space to know, maybe identify what those doubts are. Is it fear? Is it anxiety? Is it confidence? What is it? And then we can work through that together and just give them permission they're allowed to feel that. It makes sense. And also that does not apply to you right now. And I really like the exercise where we go through that and you let them know, okay, that those tools worked for maybe your parents because they were in this way. There is no shame and like around the tools that they were given and what they did with them, but you are in a different financial position. You are a different person. So you're using tools that aren't meant for the person you are today. So you can let go of that. It is not like shame or like regret. It is, okay, what tools do you need to create your new tools today for you moving forward? Because you're not in the same position. You're not in the same financial position, location, marriage maybe, or even if you're single, you're not in the same position as you were before.
No, I love that. There's a lot there to just help people just remind, even just, like you said, like simple reminders of who you are, like your hopes, your dreams. I feel like a lot of it's just as women, you like bury that to just take care of all. And it's just, you're talking about helping people to remember that they have thoughts, they have opinions, they have things that they want to pursue. So kind of going in that same flow, what are some examples of financial strategies that work particularly well for first gen or next gen?
A same line of thought, I think a great leader question, because it is the differentiator for me where I've connected with folks is that leaning into the behavioral, the psychology, the life planning techniques. I don't have my registered life planning license, but it is something I want to do, my RLP. I love starting with asking more about what's most important to you, leading with that versus the questionnaire being all around their finances. And then we put them in a portfolio and then we do a financial plan. Like, that is all great. And it used to be how it's done. And maybe some firms don't even do financial planning yet, but I go even deeper. And when you take the time to understand the why behind everything and who they are, they open up. One, next gen folks love customization, so they feel special. I think that works that way. They feel like heard, understood. And then you have the first gen folks who don't feel judged because they get to be the one driving and shaping the narrative. And I think that's the biggest thing, making sure they realize that you don't want money happening to them. They want to be controlling the dollars that they work so hard to make. So getting from a reactive to a proactive And so if you just start with understanding who they are, and I think this conversation throughout, we've ebbed and flowed, really the importance of holding space and leaning into what matters to them, what makes them them, and how they got to you that day, really.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially how you, start approaching the conversation. So with that, like, how are you, with a bit of that, how are you approaching and really deepening these conversations, especially with families that have never had this kind of dialogue before? How do you really get them to open up and to talk, even if they are, first gen here, or their families, it might even be in the room while they're having those conversations?
I think I remind them that doing nothing will change nothing. And it's one of my favorite concepts. Like, if the default is nothing, then nothing's going to change. And probably the situation you're in, you don't like, that's going to be what it is. So reminding them that some action is needed, especially when it comes to generational families. If we have families coming to us, it can be one, it's already hard enough to talk about money yourself, let alone in your partnership, and then let alone across generations. So I remind them that if I know it's uncomfortable, money is uncomfortable, and especially then passing on is uncomfortable, but you've built something that was very hard to do. And let's make sure you're doing what you want with it today. And then also that your kids, when you're not here. So I focus on, especially first gen folks, and relating to them, making sure, not making it about me, but letting them know that I understand. Because there's also another thing where you just mirror. That's not ideal. You don't just say, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. Because then that makes it about you. And I think we tend to do that as human beings, not even just as advisors, but focusing on the work, the sacrifice, the intention, and that because they have that, all that, they deserve to do the planning. They deserve to pass on wealth the way they want to. So it's something that they are almost entitled to. Like, you should feel like you deserve all of this. And sometimes people feel like, oh, maybe I'm not rich enough to do planning. Maybe I'm not rich enough to do estate planning. But there are simple things like a will that people think of, a trust and all these fancy techniques. And same thing with financial planning. They think of the tax planning side of things. But there are little things like, have you thought about how you're going to send your niece to give some money, even if it's not fully paid, graduate school or anything? Have you thought about how we're going to give them a little bit of money for school just so they can afford some tuition that better than you had it, right? So focus on what the cost it took them to get here, and that they don't want to lose out on all the hard work that they had.
I like that. I kind of want to bring something more to the forefront that you talked about really quickly, which is like simple gifts. Right. I feel like we're always looking at the larger picture of, oh my God, I have to put this person through college or graduate school, or, am I going to be able to just help them out a little bit with like this large tuition payment? But how could I start to look at it from a simplified perspective and say, hey, I just want to be able to give, to your point, like my niece, my nephew, my cousin, my aunt, or whoever is doing this thing, maybe it's $100 to go towards something, and it may not seem like a lot in the grander total, but that is a meaningful amount to start to bring those simple gifts, so that it starts the planning process, or that thought in people's heads of maybe this time it's 100 or 150 or even a little bit more than that. And then next time it's like, oh, now I know I can plan for that 100, that 150, that 500. What if I set a goal for 1,000 or 5,000 to do that thing? So I like the backup of like that simplified gift or strategy of what I can actually do that's realistic for where I might be, but then also changes my mindset for where I'm going. So I like that part.
Yeah. The world nowadays, comparison is insane, and we're constantly using the metrics of success of other people to determine our success. But if we know we would have, killed for $100 in college to pay some books, like that's, that can help. It doesn't have to be these grand gestures to show love and care. It's the small things that add up, especially for first gen and next gen. I think nowadays things are a very different economic situation than they were for previous generations. So don't discredit the impact your dollars can have. Like even 50, 100, like you said, it might not seem like a lot, but it's huge.
Love it. And before we hop out, what are some tools and other recommendations that you might have for first gen or next gen, or just maybe families as they continue to build their long-term plans?
Yeah, I think closing words is just, I think, for me, remembering that it's okay to not know. We don't know what we don't know. So that's where we start, like getting real with our situation. You can't start a foundation on a broken foundation. So it sucks. The initial part of getting real with your finances is the hardest. And I tell that to people. It's the hardest to look at your situation and be like, this is where I've messed up. There's likely things you don't love, but that's where we start. And starting with small steps, one question, one thing at a time, like that is okay. Mistakes will happen. And I think giving yourself grace. The overwhelm is real and it's normal and it's meant to feel hard. There's a lot of systemic issues outside of just our personal finance, things we're trying to work on. So know that it's not just all on you, but you do have the autonomy to then create something different for yourself. And I remind people of that. I recognize our system is not ideal. Great. What are you going to do about it? So how do we start to take action today? And my favorite little quote is just the best investment is in yourself. Whatever that looks like, whether that's $5 into your high yield savings, 50 into your 401k, reading a book, starting a business, whatever that looks like for you, but you will never regret anything you pour into yourself. And we're going to have a million reasons not to. But I just, hopefully people can just take one thing. And if they're listening to this podcast, there's probably something that made them want to listen. And so focus on that one little inkling thought you had that brought you here and have that drive the momentum.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And investing in you is extremely important, and no one, can take that away. So I'm glad you said that. Is there anything else that you would love to just leave the audience with before we hop off? And also make sure people know where to find you. That's also important.
I'm on LinkedIn. You can definitely follow me there. I have social media. You can look up my name. I have some media pieces out there. I've been quoted, and if there's ever helpful, I hope that you can use them as tools. I run workshops. I do speaking engagements specifically towards women, next gen, Latinos in this finance relational space and changing the dynamic we have with money. And thank you for having me. I'm happy to be a resource for people and just show us that we can do it. We can do it differently. And when we show up differently, then we show others that they can do the same. So remember, we're not just doing this for us. We're doing this for everyone that comes after us. And although that is a lot of pressure, like we talked about, I think both you and I agree that it's also something to be very proud of. And it gives us a motivation to keep going. And it's why we show up.
Absolutely. And I couldn't say that better myself. I'm going to just drop the mic right there. Gloria, thank you for all that you do in the industry, and all that you continue to pour into those who know you personally and professionally. It's definitely been a pleasure to have you on. And I absolutely know someone got a lot from this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So everyone who is listening, please continue to subscribe and share. We have some great conversations coming up. And thank you for joining us at the Zone of Genius. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in to the Zone of Genius, where we make money make sense. If you felt seen, heard, or inspired today, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode, leave a review, and tag us in the moments that moved you. And when you're ready to stop doing it all alone and start building your financial team, visit chipprofessionals.com and we'll connect you with trusted experts who will help move you forward with strategy, support, and confidence. Until next time, stay in your genius.